Johnson says the reemergence of the American financial oligarchy is quite recent and the most advanced in the world. So far from being a bastion of democracy, the United States actually has the most advanced oligarchy in the world right now. Now, he's saying that that's kind of a reemergence, probably suggesting that in the Gilded Age it wielded great power and does again. We can think about that. But let's also throw into the mix here former President Jimmy Carter in 2015, who said the United States is now an oligarchy. Again, this idea that it has been and it is again, we can explore that. But he said essentially, given the decision of 2010 with the Citizens United, and perhaps one of the biggest decisions to come out of the Supreme Court in 50 years or perhaps more, this idea that free speech and money were essentially the same in terms of operative modes inside of the democratic system. Shocking decision, shocking decision. So let's wrap this up with the final analysis, and this one gets a little bit more play out there in the public domain. And the question that we're going to look at for this week is a famous study from 2014, so only years ago, a few years ago, sometimes called the Princeton study. I don't know if that's the best name for it. I think it's to kind of give it some gravitas. But this is a study by Martin Gilens. Okay, so it's a famous study in 2014 by Martin Gilens of Princeton and Benjamin Page of Northwestern University. Together, what did they look at? They analyzed 1,800 policies between 1981 and 2002, comparing expressed preferences of the American public opposed to wealthy special interest groups. So here's a couple political scientists actually doing something of value, my opinion here. And they're asking essentially, we're looking at public policy, who makes the roads, who makes the schools, who makes the laws that which we live at. And he's going to say, looking at all these laws in that long, longitudinal stretch of time between 1980 and 2002. And here's the cutaway from this. The American public actually have little influence over the policies of government adopted. So they said, in a sense, it's not that sometimes laws can't benefit from some citizens, regular working people, but if it does so, if somebody actually benefits from a policy coming out of Washington, it's because it happens to also benefit them. They're saying all policies in this 30-year time frame that they're looked at were designed by and expressly meant to benefit the oligarchical class. So that's huge, very provocative. Called the Princeton study. Zero correlation between policies coming out of Washington, D.C., the laws that we live by, zero correlation that they were actually designed with the intent of helping regular people. And so this is actually empirical evidence that sort of verifies this iron law of oligarchy, that there's this sort of democratic face, and now we're wondering, is it a security apparatus behind this face, or is it some kind of oligarchical structure that is there to some extent to perhaps enhance the security state for the public welfare, but also might carry with it other agendas. So here's what I want you to do for next time. I want you to look at one of the many resources out there and just get a superficial look at the longitudinal studies of policies that have come out of Washington in the last 40 years. And do you see any, because they said it's kind of maybe a little tricky to measure who benefits from them, but who produced the policies, who wrote and created the actual legislation that came out of Washington? Can you find anything that wasn't a product of, we'll call it the high finance, let's call it that was not a product of high finance? My investigations, I haven't looked at every last one, but I haven't found any myself. So the bigger question then here is, let's start putting this together between the study, the finding of the Princeton study in 2014, and this idea of the security state. And let's just start thinking through before we go on to new material, where are we at with this idea that all policies coming out of Washington were specifically for this class. We can go all the way back to our analysis of the deep state, where Lofgren said that there's these two nodes of power in America that he had analyzed: Wall Street, high finance, and the security state. And let's think again about that connection between the two. All policies were, to some extent, enhancing the small clique of people associated with Wall Street. And those people, in turn, were the force behind the security state or the deep state. So let's figure out from the literature we've discussed so far where we're at in terms of the who's, the what's, the why's. And we'll continue studying Oligarch and see a little bit about this evolution. Is this something that truly reemerged? Is it something that was profound a century ago and kind of came on the scene and disappeared and is there? Or has it always been there and it's something that just sort of surfaces as a part occasionally of public discussion? So thanks, and join me then.